This is Tim Albright with AVNation with an AVNation special celebrating Black History Month with the Black experience in the AV industry. And with me is my buddy, Sean Reid. Welcome, sir.
Black Power, how's it going?
Good. What we're doing is we're just kind of getting your sense and your experience in the industry. Sean is an accomplished designer, programmer, worked all up and down, side to side in this country. So currently up in Wisconsin. The fact that he's been in different coasts and he's still in Wisconsin is a whole nother issue, but that's me as a Chicago Bears fan. So Sean, talk for a second about kind of your journey, because it's an interesting journey and how you kind of got into AV.
Sure. It started as a hobby. As a kid, I was into home theaters and building my own stereo. My mother is a huge music fan. She got me into music, and my mom always had this giant component stereo system with the reel-to-reel that she still has that works, and record player and tape players and speakers and this massive record collection. So I was exposed to it. So I started to build my own home theater and save my money, and slowly bit by bit with Advent speakers. And I had like an Iowa subwoofer that was way too powerful and should have died years ago. That's last time I found it in the garage, still worked, surprisingly. But no, I built this thing, and the key centerpiece was my Sony Laserdisc player, which I saved up a whole year to buy, the floor model with no remote. And funny enough, the CD thing broke on it, but it still plays Laserdisc to this day.
But do you have Laserdiscs?
I think I still have the Laserdisc, but not the player. I think
Okay.
I think I have the Japanese release of Pulp Fiction, the director's cut of Clerks, a bunch of anime, and inappropriate Chinese kung fu movies. So a nice smattering of weird things. So that was kind of like my foray, and being the son of a single mom and having no men around and no uncles really who were in my life, I had to learn to do everything. So when my mom said, "Hey, we need more phone lines in the house," and the phone company said, "We're going to charge you $600," she said, "You figure it out." So I spent a weekend tearing apart the phone lines and learning how to do phone lines, and every little thing slowly, pieced together. And then when I began playing, and I got into computers as a kid also, and so taking them apart, building them, old Commodores and Apple computers. And then when I became a musician and getting into pro audio and recording, all these different skills kind of slowly coalesced into this field. And I guess it really came to fruition when I was working at B&H Photo out in New York in their home theater department. And they'd started a home theater department to actually do install. But because of the Orthodox Jewish owners not wanting to really support media, it never really got off the ground. But they'd hired some really brilliant talent in the industry in New York at that time. And so when they closed that down, people were saying, "Well, who could do it?" And say, "Oh, ask Sean, he can do it." And I'm like, I can moonlight. And I just had my first kid, and I was like, okay, well, I could use extra cash.
Yeah.
Did one job and did another job, and next thing I know, I'm working 2 full-time jobs. And eventually, I just went into that full-time and took a very small $3,000 loan from a family member and made my first $250,000 in a year, and I felt pretty good about myself. And I formed my first high-end, it was just residential, tri-state, mainly New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Long Island, Nassau, building media PCs and buying and selling Zeta, if anyone remembers Zeta media centers. I was Frankensteining those. We did Control 4 and Nuvo, did a lot of Nuvo and Universal RTI, and taught myself to program Crestron when I wouldn't pay the percussion guys to do their work. But because I was working with high-end homeowners, I got access to their businesses. A lot of them were in construction and things. And then I got access to commercial. I said, ooh, commercial is much more fun, because in residential, they'll spend all the money in the world to make it make toast, even if you tell them it won't make toast. And then you have to argue with the wife about the drapes and the paint, and you have to being a marriage counselor. When you're in a failing marriage, you don't want to be marriage counselor to 20 people when you can't make your own work. I go to work 8 away from my wife, so why would I want to deal with you and your crap? So it was fun. Then 2008, 2009 happened, and everyone went out of business. I bought 2 smaller companies and then eventually sold mine. I think roughly it was like 30 companies in New York, and in the end there were 6 or 7. We all kind of went by the wayside, and went back into pro audio a little bit longer and made some connections. And then when I moved from New York back to California, got into commercial heavily. So I've been in the field about 14 years altogether of AV in pro audio altogether. Well, pro audio much longer. And I thought commercial would be much more to my liking. not so much sales. I never liked sales, and I always get pigeonholed in sales and really wanted to do design. And so was doing design on the side while doing sales and not being able to move up in the company I was in. Got a chance to do project management, which was cool, but I still wasn't getting to where I wanted to be. But I got to learn all these disciplines. And that's really how I got into it. And here I am today, you know, the great nomad of AV, apparently.
Well, you are one of several, certainly, but you have been back and forth. One of the things I want to talk about, and it's something that, you know, I don't ask lightly, but I've said this several times. I know who I am. I know what I am in the industry, and I am pushing the old white guy. I'm not quite to the old part yet, but, you know, middle-aged white guy. How about that? And so I don't have the same experiences that you have. I haven't had some of those challenges. So talk for a second about, you know, the hurdles that you've had to face, and then how you overcame them.
Well, that's an interesting question. So hurdles I've had to overcome, those are vast and many. As we know, AV is a very monochromatic field. That's a nice way of saying it's a lot of white guys. Yeah. And so, and I grew up in California. It's very diverse. Went to private school, so I was used to being around it. But if I'm being blunt, you know, I describe AV as a collection of nerds who found their calling and a way to make money out of their nerddom, which is what we should all do. That's why there's an ILM, and, you know, there's a Blizzard Games, and there's a LucasArts, a bunch of nerds who found a way to profit off it. The difference with AV is that AV tends to, you can get any group of AV people from anywhere in the world, and you can start a conversation about 20 subjects that they all agree on. You can start about Dune, Star Wars, D&D, industrial music, Japanese bands, anime, and I mean old school anime, not this new crap. Obscure avant-garde bands, you know, if you want to talk about like Nico, Mr. Bungle, John Zorn, you know, Merzabal, everyone seems to know the same crazy bands I've never heard of. Cosplay is always a big one, but, you know, you kind of see a general milieu of people. You know, I've never seen more people argue about which was better, Zork 1 or Zork 2, than AV guys. And if you need someone to explain what Zork 1 and Zork 2 to you, you should not be watching this video.
Exactly.
Go ask your friends, they'll know. So as far as interests are all the same, but for me, I have run into quite a few problems in that field, because to me, what happens to most nerds, and in the pejorative of nerds, because now nerddom is cool, because anyone can watch Game of Thrones and still be cool, you know, whatever. I still haven't watched it or read the book, so I'm not going to. I'll go play D&D and watch Record of Loadout Wars. Seen it, done it, don't need to. Two things happen. Either they stay a nerd, and a full-blown nerd, and I'm like all for the nerds, or they got to college, got cool, finally got a girlfriend, cleaned up, lost some weight, and now they want to forget how nerdy they were, because now they're the cool white guy. And they're two different personalities. The ones who were able to transition out of the appearance of nerddom are the worst, because they have this little chip on their shoulder. That's how they've made it out. And when I come along, I deal with a lot of ego, misplaced anger, or misdirection of a lot of things. And it's difficult. I usually have to approach every job, whether it's a contractor or as an employee, with a lot of caution, careful how I act, what I say. You know, even when I know I might have a better design or an idea, I have to be very cautious about how I approach it. I sit in meetings, and just because I have an idea that I want to be heard, if I am too forceful, then I'm combative and yelling, even though I'm saying, well, no, I just want to be able to say what I think without being shut down. You pay me a lot of money to give you information, yet you don't ever want to hear it. So if you just want me to sit here and be a bump in a log, find somebody else. I like to work for a living. There's a lot of that. I've run into, without saying names or companies, a lot of times where I'll have a manager or supervisor who will find any issue with the design to say, so I'll claim incompetence because they're threatened by my very presence. I've lost many jobs that way. I've had false claims of racism put on me by other minorities in AV companies. So it's been difficult. One of the reasons why I always try to stay an independent contractor is because I don't have to deal with that crap. It lets me to still enjoy it.
Do you not, though? As an independent, I mean, don't you that doesn't happen even? Okay.
No, because it's me dealing with the client, and if they're someone I don't want to deal with, I don't have to deal with them. Versus when you work in an office and this person's your boss and they're being condescending and racist, and you have nowhere to go but to them, you're stuck.
I can see that.
Yeah, it's very, like I said, I won't get into any names, and unfortunately, we've seen NDAs and discrimination lawsuits in the last few years. I've finally started fighting back and winning. I don't think things have changed, but I've definitely become more assertive than I used to be in my 20s and early 30s. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk about them getting specifics, and because, like I said, there have been a few lawsuits, I can't get too specific, but the lack of diversity in AV is a big problem, and people are starting to address it. Automation Arts, who I work for now, is really ahead of the curve. I think I'm the only person of color who works here, but they are actually seeking out women and BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, the general term now that people are using, to bring them in, especially in Wisconsin, which is about as integrated as a lined sheet of paper. But trying to actually, not because it's just the right thing to do, but as research shows, when you have a more diverse cultural, ethnic, racial workforce, you get a better work product because they're bringing different experiences. Whether it's all men, all women, you need different experiences to create a better work product. How I approach things, how you approach things, how a woman would, or Asian person, or we all bring these different things to the gumbo that is our project management, our design, our understanding of technology. I come from an audio background primarily, so I'm one of the audiophile guys. I like things to sound good, but the honest truth is, even though a Tannoy sounds better than a JBL, does the client tell the difference? No, because they're still using Zoom through a Mercury and everything sounds like crap. So will I argue with it internally? Not even more. Why are we sitting arguing? Junky but loud versus a Tannoy. I'll take the Tannoy any day. But JBL likes to give rebates. It's like strippers throwing the money back at you. Who would say no?
So some of the stuff is certainly workplace, and you kind of caught me off guard with the comment about subcontractor or independent contractor, but it makes sense, right? As an independent contractor, as somebody who runs your own business, you get to hire your clients. You can decide who you work for and who you don't.
Right. So if someone's being a bigot, I can say, or I feel uncomfortable, I can say, I don't want to work with you. I don't have to.
You don't have to. Talk for a second to other young men, other Black men, or other Black women in the industry who are coming up.
Well,
what advice would you give them?
I have found in the last year or two, I've been searching out other people of color in the industry. I've tried to have been collecting across the country, trying to get at least one person in every state. Alaska hasn't worked out so well, neither has Maine, but by the way, 3 Black hockey players. I think they all quit already. Surprise, surprise.
No.
Oh, they still play. Wait, one thing. I don't follow hockey. What do I know? I know I'm gonna get some thrown at me. It's Wisconsin, but probably a piece of cheese. I have found that the majority of people of color in this industry are actually Black women, which is very, and a lot of them are either non-binary or transgender, which adds another layer of things to it. But even to many of the women I know in AV, and if they're watching this, they might know who you are. Hello. Who are white women. I can speak of two I know. One I used to know very well, who's a top engineer at one of the largest AV companies. And she dresses like a scummy guy because it allows her to get her work done. And she's like, if I come in baggy pants and shorts, it allows me to be respected in my field, even though she's the head engineer for this large company with can't say their name. For her, it's easier, but it's funny. There are other women in that office who dress like other normal women who are attractive, but they're in office admin. But she's the engineer, and just to get her job done and feel comfortable, she has to not be a woman. And I've seen other women do that, and I think that's ridiculous. And some of the best engineers I've ever met are women. And I've spoken to many of them, and they all say the same thing. It's very hard. They get either they have to keep moving around, or they find a niche and they have to hold on to it with dear life. And I felt that same thing, but I would say the most important thing is for any engineer, and this hands down, I do not like engineers who have never been in the field. And I don't mean they go to sites. I mean, if you've never had to hang a TV, actually do mounting, pull cable, paint grills. If you've ever done it, I can tell design. Anyone who's dealt with any large architecture firm has dealt with someone like, oh, this is our AV engineer. You've never been on a ladder in your life, in your own home even, I bet. Because like, oh, this will work. That doesn't work. It says right here in the manual. Okay, you're looking at the manual. You've never even touched the device. Go away. The best thing you always do, you need to be hands-on to be a good engineer. You need to get out in the field and build a rack. You need to dress tables. You need to learn how to hang a TV properly on your own. And I don't mean a 32-inch. If you can't hang a 42 50-inch on your own, you should not be designing AV. If you've never done that, if you've never had to drill a hole, dress it, pull cables, shouldn't do it. Because when I see guys say, oh yeah, 50 inch, that should take you 20 minutes. Really? Come here. Go. Do it by yourself. See how long it takes. You have to actually have a real world experience. If you've never PM'd a project, if you've never had to commission a project, all these things, try to get your hands in as many fields. Also get your hands in many verticals. Education is very different than healthcare. Healthcare is very different than security. Security is very different than government. Government than military, different than corporate. Try to get as many verticals as you can and learn as much as you can so that you can have that jack of all trades. And you can take all that information and it makes you a better designer. And the good thing about, at least for me, I look at it as the fact that I've had to move around because I've had to resign so many times or leave a company, is that it's allowed me to touch so many different projects in different places. I've gotten to gain all this great industry information that most people wouldn't get and store it up here, which makes me an asset. And when I pull on that and use it for myself. It's not fun to transition that much and it doesn't look good on a resume, but if for any experience in life, if you don't learn from it, then what's the point of living? So try and gain as much as you can. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try something new and see, throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. I also say we need to do more vocational training. It's shocking today that you can go to Harvard or UC Berkeley and you can get a doctor's degree in Nintendo, but you can't get a bachelor's degree in AV still. You can get a master's degree in computer science, but you can't get an associate in audiovisual installation. How the heck is that possible when we literally are on every college campus? They have AV departments, but you can't get a degree in AV. You can get a degree in audio engineering. You can get a degree in acoustic design. You can get a degree in IT. No one said, hey, you've got all the disciplines. I mean, if you look at AV fields, most AV fields who've been, a lot of them haven't finished college, or they went to college for usually music, art, but you never see them in computer design or audio. It's almost always live musicians in AV, a lot of film people, film editing, or audio recording type folks. Expressions out in Emeryville, California, my old home stopping grounds. One of the biggest things they turn on is AV technicians, because people go there to learn the audio side of it and they transition AV field, because we don't even have any specialized schools really for AV. You'll see me in associates or something. So, like when probably you and I, you're older than me, but our school has AV clubs. If your school has an AV club, or if your school doesn't have an AV club and you're a young person, start the goddamn AV club. I started my school's anime club and it ran for 7 years after I graduated, the longest running school club to this day. Eventually it shut down, but get involved, try something and see, learn something. You got nothing to do on a weekend? Take apart that old PC you're not using. Take it apart. See how it works. You can put it back together and make it work. And if you can't, figure out why. Take apart that old TV. Get your hands dirty. Read a book, not on a Kindle, a book. Paper.
See, now you're sounding like an old man.
Yep.
All right.
I am an old man. That's what they saw in my yearbook in high school. It says have a good summer, old man, for even freshman year.
many years from now, because you are not an old man. But when you retire, I want you to think about that time. Look back on the industry and what do you want to have seen changed? And what do you want to have changed?
I would like the AV industry to get the respect it deserves. For too many years, we've been the bridesmaid, but never the bride. And that's slowly changing, but it's only changing because we're changing genders from AV into incorporated in IT. And if anything, IT should be incorporating into us, in my opinion, because they're more dependent on us than we are on them, really, when it comes down to it. IT is God's honest truth, very simple compared to AV. AV, you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to know construction. You have to know electrical. You have to know IT. You need to know about IP tables and voltages and audio. We have to know 20. We have to be masters of 20 different things to just as much as build a huddle room. And so it's like, well, let's fold AV into IT. No. IT should be folded into us. I would like to see more women brought to the forefront of AV. AV is very creative, and women generally are much more expressive in that regards. I like to see AV as an art form. I mean, just to give you a prime example, electricians, I'm running romance here, and I'm doing that, and that's technically lumens and incandescents. Okay, I'm done. We have to say, what's the best display out of these 30 manufacturers for this room? What's the best size? And what camera's going to go best under there? And what cable routes do I have? And now what cable covers? Do I have put cables? Well, you have to literally be able to be an interior designer, a construction designer, and a technology designer simultaneously at all times.
Yeah.
And still be good at customer service and not be a total, shoegazing lunatic like most of our programming friends who, have 30 cats and still live in their parents' basement, but still have every Flash comic ever made somehow in mint condition. Hey, I'm not knocking it, but we have to really be able to do so many different things. And I tend to think that, people of color are generally much more outgoing because we have to kind of overcompensate for being marginalized. That helps us. We can kind of get into the spaces. We can bring those different experiences to the forefront and challenge a lot of things. I'd like to see the industry embrace the diversity that is there. It's just hidden. There are a lot of amazing people in this industry who've been in it for decades, people of color, who get very little recognition, unfortunately. And many of them are trying to stay in the AV field, but get out from the company they've been in where they've been stuck for so long because they're a woman or they're a person of color and they can't get past this little box they've put them in. And I've experienced that too. And a lot of them come to me and say, hey, I want to open my own company. I say, do not open your own AV consulting company. Do not. If you do, the first thing you should buy is a tombstone and keep it there next to your desk. Just leave the date off, or you put the date you started the company as your end date. It's AV consulting is gone. I mean, most bid requirements require that you have at least 3 employees. And so if you're an independent consultant, you best you be as a sub, and you're just setting yourself up for that. There's a lot of money involved in the insurance, all these things. But study, know the business side. Know whatever state you're in, gain skills that you would have. For me, for example, like I'm very keen on building codes, which is something AV people are like, I'm like, yeah, it doesn't happen often, but that one time your client gets slapped with a $25,000 to $100,000 fee because you said, hey, we don't need all those ALS channels. Hey, you can put that schedule up 2 more inches. And then they say, hey, you're paying this fine. I've seen it happen. Don't be afraid to be the person to point out the innocuous. You be the innocuous, because the innocuous is, devil's in the details. And AV is all about details. You ask 10 AV engineers, RS-232 or CEC, and you'll get 10 answers. And even though they're all saying the same thing, they'll get 10 answers.
You'll get one answer. It will not be CEC.
At Automation Arts, we are a big supporter of CEC. It depends on the display, what you're doing. So as that is our standard.
We'll discuss this later.
It is, and I've seen it work, and it can work. CEC has gotten much better, and if you know your displays,
well, that may be true. It has been a minute since I programmed a system, so
right. No, CEC has gotten better. I prefer RCC, but now people are using the LAN network.
No, absolutely. You didn't give me LAN as an option. You said CEC or 232.
Well,
so.
I'm still RS-232 because I like to sit on a rusty ladder with my headphones on, and getting pieces of copper stuck in my fingers.
Oh yeah.
At 3 a.m. On some random corporate campus, pissed off. That's life. That's the best part of AV. When you're like, how many hours have I been here? Oh, the sun's coming back up. Isn't that gorgeous? You look back at those. I look back on that with reminiscence. I look back at hanging TVs in the Bronx and opening up walls and finding wood and cobblestone and trying to find ways at midnight to hang some guy's TV so he can watch the game. All those things you learn by actually being there. The joy of designing your first large project with multi-tier audio, and those are your first broadcast system, or maybe commissioning your first control system. All those little things that when you're doing them, you're freaking out. Oh, I'm gonna screw this up. You look back and go, wow, I did that. I figured that out. And that's the beauty of it. That to me is where I'll be looking back, and I'm hoping in some time when I retire. I plan to do I'm from Oakland, California, so I plan to do it 2 short tests. I'll retire every 5 years and come back and say I'm back like I never left, and say I've invented something cool and new, and then retire again. So I'll probably retire next year, and then I'll come back again.
Okay, we'll have you on when you come back then. So.
Yeah, something like that. But I would like to see, particularly women. I'd like to see more young people brought in and trained. I think this is an industry that would do very well for a lot of Black and Hispanic, Latinx, and Asian youth who already have an interest in a lot of things you're talking about: computers, music, audio. They all feed together. And if you're already in your school's anime club, and you're already a burgeoning audiophile, and you're already taking apart your iPad because you realize it's crap, and you just want to see if there really is a genie inside, and oops, it's not. It just says made in China. And why did I pay so much for this? You're the guy who's going to be where we are in 20 years. Yeah. Don't be afraid to embrace it now. Look into things, buy books, and don't be afraid of read audiobooks. Anything on sound engineering, sound reinforcing. There's a great Yamaha book on sound reinforcement. It was printed like 87. Almost every AV engineer.
Yamaha Guide to Mixing. Yep.
Yeah. If you don't, I have 3 versions of it, all beat up. If you don't have that, what is the hell is wrong with you? If you don't have I have my first edition of AV over IP from, that's highly out of date, but some of the language that's in that first edition is very critical to thinking about AV over IP, whereas the new one's cleaned it up and made it standardized. It's still thinking of it theoretical, which is very important. Read. I can't stress it enough. It's funny when you look at any AV person's house, they don't have good AV usually. They usually have ATV, maybe a mixed mass speakers, and a bunch of cables laying around, if that, or they have no TV at all. If the shoemaker has no shoes, the hairdresser has bad hair, AV doesn't like me. When I go home, I like to relax and fill my mind with information. Just think, try to be creative. Don't be afraid to say, hey, this might work. Try it out yourself. If you can save some money for your new Nikes or your, new YouTube channel, buy a cheap rack. Get a rack from an old client. Start building your first rack. Build a test rack in your house, just for fun. See what you can piece together. Even if it's old equipment, even if you have to get an old 2G DGE and a CP2 and some old BSS stuff. If someone will give it to you, who cares? Or figure it out. That's what we did. We were all guys who took stuff apart and said, I want to be the person who put it back together. Just like every great mechanic started by taking apart their first car, or every hardcore cyclist building a bike. Get your hands into it. It's not everything is, technology is not just about the presentation. I always get hung up when people talk about how ugly Extron products are. I'm like, I don't look at AV gear for the aesthetics. What the hell do I care? The rack's going in a closet. No one, if someone actually walks by a rack and says, oh, that colored gray on the Extron's ugly, I'm like, hey, how's the audio sound? Great. Then shut up about the color. How often are you looking at it? If an AV company makes cool looking product, you probably shouldn't be speccing it. Rule number 1.
Okay, that might be a bit. They're not all ugly. All right, get your hands dirty though. Sean, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. If somebody wants to connect with you, how do they do that?
Through one of my various divorce attorneys would probably be the best way. They seem to be, one of my ex-wife's divorce attorneys, they love to send me crap daily, hourly. You could marry me and then take all my stuff. Get in line. It's not much to take, but those are the best ways to know. No, there is still Astroman on Twitter, Astroman on Facebook. You can reach out to Automation Arts in either Madison or Milwaukee, and they can direct you to me. That's the best way. If you have an axe to grind with me, please forget you knew me, and I'll do the same. And if you'd like to get to know me, ask someone who already does, and they'll tell you a bunch of amazing things about me and probably a few horrible things too. So
I don't know anything horrible yet. So
everything's fair in love and AV.
Absolutely. All right, Sean Reid, thank you so much, sir. For us, for AVNation, go to our website, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others, including our 2 weeklies, Resi Week that looks at the residential side and AV Week that looks at the commercial side. All that and more at AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv.